Hey there, so today we are talking about if now is the time for you to have a diet break. You've been in a calorie deficit for a period of time, whether that's a short period of time or maybe it's an extended period of time. You've got a lot of weight to lose and you want to lose it as fast as fucking possible. There is no shame in that. We would all want to make our goals come as quickly as possible and shorten this time period we have of actually losing weight. But is there an opportune time for you to take a break from that process and just take it easy for a while? Dial back on the calorie deficit, maybe go back to maintenance, maybe even have what we call a refeed, and then just let your body just have a little bit of a break from this dieting process. Is that a good thing? If it is, when should you be doing it? That's what we're going to be answering right now in this edition of the podcast, this edition of the show. Now, when we talk about diet breaks, the process of dieting has various different effects on our bodies. There is a metabolic impact, there's a hormonal impact, and there's also a psychological impact. So yes, there are things physiologically going on within the body, but it also can be a little bit of a mind fuck, right? You go through this dieting process, you're starting with all the motivation, you really want to make progress, you really want to stick to that plan, you want to go to the gym all the time, but then the grind hits. Day after day, week after week, you're grinding away, you're doing the right things, but it's taking your toll. You just think, please let me eat a little bit more food. Please, sir, can I have some more? That's kind of where you are right now. You just want to have a little bit more food. You want to have this little bit of a psychological break. So never underestimate the fact that there's this physiological aspect to dieting, but there's also a mental aspect to dieting. And if you kind of keep plowing yourself into the ground and smashing yourself into the ground mentally through dieting, then well, that's going to lead to potentially you slipping backwards in a bigger way than if potentially you took a little bit of a diet break, which is what we're going to be talking about in a second. Now, let's also talk about rates of weight loss. So some of you out there would be kind of shying away from a rapid weight loss approach. Maybe that's something that you've tried in the past. You tried to lose weight real quick. So you've gone like Juice Plus route and you've gone like pretty much just fucking starving yourself. And that kind of didn't work because you realize that Juice Plus basically was just drinking juice, and therefore when it came to eating food, you didn't know what the fuck to do. So you overate again and the weight piled back on. Then you kind of go through this whole process of saying, well, next time I'm going to diet, I'm going to do it slowly and methodically. I'm going to make sustainable changes. And that's great. That is an awesome way to do it. If you have been yo-yo dieting around the houses and you kind of can't make anything stick for a long period of time, then yes, a slower, more methodical and systematic approach to dieting could work well for you. But if that's not you, if you're not the person who's been yo-yo dieting, you've got pretty good nutritional knowledge and you've got pretty good control over what you're eating, there's zero things wrong with you doing a rapid fat loss approach. You can really accelerate the process, go balls deep into a calorie deficit and make progress fast. Now, some people think that rapid fat loss process actually comes with some more negative effects, like there's more hormonal impacts. You're going to disrupt the body's equilibrium, if you want to call it that. You know, you're going to mess up your BMI, you're going to destroy your metabolism. All of this sort of stuff is going to happen because you accelerated that fat loss process, which isn't strictly true, because all that seems to happen when we look at all of the evidence that's available is that basically rapid fat loss doesn't necessarily fuck up your hormones as much as any other form of dieting. It's just that a slower form of dieting, it takes longer for those things to happen. So it's not necessarily that rapid weight loss is bad. It's just that the effects that dieting has, the natural effects that are perfectly normal to expect, only happen further down the line. So let's get that clear. Rapid fat loss is okay in the right situations, for the right person, in the right circumstances, and done in the right way. Now, when you go through any sort of dieting process, you are going to experience this slowdown in your progress. You might start off with some rapid fat loss or some rapid weight loss in those initial weeks. You think, fuck yes, this is awesome. I love dieting. This diet is awesome. I want to make virtual love to this diet. I want to fuck this diet. Fuck it hard because it's doing me good. Now, that's probably a lot of water. Sorry to piss on your fire with that water. It's not necessarily fat loss that you're losing in those, at least those first week or so. And that's why, especially like keto, it's held as this magic diet because you lose all this weight really, really quickly, which you do because it's mainly to do with water. But that aside, this is not a keto debate. So what happens over a period of time is your body's this fucking clever little thing. It's this clever little machine that says, I've got the measure of you, you little motherfucker. I am going to slow some shit down because I don't think we should be dieting. I like this body fat. I want to keep us where we are. So it has this process. Now, people confuse this with starvation mode, which actually just doesn't fucking exist. So I'm going to talk about some things now that people will think, well, isn't that fucking starvation mode? No, it's not, because starvation mode doesn't exist. Because you ask any anorexic or someone who has actually been starved whether the body retains body fat, the answer is fucking no, because you can starve yourself to death if you really, really want to. Now, I'm assuming you don't want to starve yourself to death, but let's talk about some of the things that are going on inside the body that are causing these things to happen. So, metabolic adaptation, or to give it its proper name, adaptive thermogenesis, is what's going on. Now, what the fuck does that mean? Adaptive thermogenesis, I didn't understand that. I didn't even fucking understand metabolic adaptation when you said that either, Simon. What does that mean? So this is where your body is adapting to the lower calories you are feeding it. So what happens here is the body says, well, okay, we're having less calories, so let's make do with what we have. Let's change some things around, and this is where the sort of hormonal changes come in. So your feelings of feeling full go down. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your NEAT, so walking around, just doing normal activities, you'll become more lethargic just naturally. So that will reduce down. Obviously, Fitbits, trackers and things like that might be forcing you to counter that anyway, but if you didn't have a Fitbit and a activity tracker, you may naturally just reduce the amount you move because your body is just basically trying to conserve as much energy as possible. You also find that your hunger will go up because your body wants you to eat more. So the hunger hormone ghrelin, your body starts to say, we want fucking more. So we want more food. So let's shoot this hormone up. Let's reduce leptin, which is another hormone within this sort of balance effect that impacts hunger. And then your body is just therefore trying to encourage you to eat more. So if you think about this over a longer period of time, then the more you diet, the more you're fighting these feelings of more hunger and your body trying to basically reduce things. So you might have a reduced amount of activity. So again, your calorie deficit might not be as big as it was at the start. So all of these things are compounding together and having a compounding effect. And then overall, this is just basically your body is going to get improved energy efficiency. It's going to get better at utilizing the energy, i.e. the calories, i.e. the food that you are feeding it. So other things like fidgeting, just general movement, all of that sort of stuff goes down as well. So this is the things that are happening right now. And metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis, again, using the posh phrases, because we do like to use the correct phrases now and again. We don't just like to say fuck all the time, although we do like to say fuck. Now, metabolic adaptation counts for around about 15 to 20% lower after hard dieting. So you can have that impact on things. And it can occur even if you're maintaining muscle. So you might say, well, okay, I'm eating a high protein diet. I'm still training, so I'm keeping muscle. So therefore I'm not having this effect because muscle burns more calories than fat and all this sort of nonsense. Actually, that difference is so minuscule, you wouldn't even worry about it. But actually, you will still have this adaptation process happening even if you were retaining muscle. It's just a natural part of the process. On top of that, your basal metabolic rate, i.e. the amount of calories your body needs just to carry out normal functions, regardless of exercise and all that sort of stuff, that reduces naturally when you reduce weight anyway. So if you think about it, if you were 80 kilos and you had a BMR, let's say, I don't know, of 1800, then if you were 70 kilos, because you take up less space, less mass on the earth, your BMR will be naturally less. So if you lose weight, your BMR will naturally reduce anyway. So you have this effect that over time, all of these compounding variables start to take effect and cause your weight to have a little bit of a plateau effect, potentially. There's also a study done in 1944. Now, some people say, 1944? Isn't that a bit old? Well, genetically speaking, your body hasn't really changed much since 1944. Okay, you probably weren't alive in 1944, but genetically speaking, the human body hasn't really changed since 1944. So it still works. This was called the Minnesota study. It's a semi-starvation study. You probably couldn't get away with it now. So basically they were just starving fucking people and seeing what happened, which probably from an ethics point of view is not a great approach. Certainly not a study I would want to voluntarily participate in. But anyway, over the course of this study, they noticed that energy expenditure, i.e. calories burnt, reduced by 40%. Now, 25% of that was down to pure weight loss. So you've starved these dudes and they've lost a shit ton of weight and their energy expenditure has gone down, largely to do with the weight that they lost, which is kind of logical. Then there's the other 15%, which was due to metabolic adaptation. So all of the things that I've just spoken about previously. So where does all of this background information now leave us when it comes to taking a diet break? So what we want to be looking for when you're in this dieting phase is you want to be looking for those warning signs. You want to be looking for those little red and amber flags that you might be drifting into a period of metabolic adaptation. And that might cause you then to start thinking about, okay, is it time for a diet break? Now, people often think about diet breaks as refeed days. Some people think of them as cheat days. Now, a cheat fucking day should just be banned as a phrase. It is just not the way to go whatsoever. Eating an uncontrolled amount of food is just not the way to go. You can really fuck up the progress you make quite easily by having several cheat days, whether they are weekly or whatever. You can really fuck it up. So don't go down a cheat route. And you don't need to call it a cheat day either. If you are responsible and you know what you're doing with your nutrition, you can incorporate fucking donuts, pizza, chips, or whatever it is you consider a cheat into your normal diet anyway with no actual effect. But again, we're going off track. We're not talking about cheat days. So refeeds, often seen as a good thing in the nutritional world, and saying, okay, we're going to do a refeed once a week. We're going to boost your metabolism. We're going to do yada, 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 this, that, and the other. No, not really. A one-day refeed pretty much does fuck all when it comes to metabolism. Doesn't boost the metabolism, doesn't really do fucking anything. So if you go down the route of a one-day refeed, or a coach pushes you down a route of a one-day refeed, it's probably not going to do you any fucking good whatsoever. You might do a one-day refeed for something like if you're trying to carb up for a race, okay? Might do that, might sound logical. But in this process of dieting, boosting metabolism, a one-day refeed doesn't work. It needs to be 3 days plus of you overeating, mainly on carbohydrate. And by overeating, you might just increase your caloric intake up to maintenance levels. You might even go into a calorie surplus. And that process is really trying to basically increase of carbs has shown to have an increase in your leptin levels. So again, coming back to that hormonal balance that's going to be positive for you when it comes to actually trying to lose weight. And you can increase your overall energy expenditure by up to 7%, according to one other study. Now, that kind of has, you might be thinking, well, what the fuck does that mean? Simon, come on, talk to me in fucking English. Okay, I'm trying to make this kind of scientific as well as fucking just me spitballing. Now, When you have this refeed process, what we're trying to do is just give your body a little bit of a break from the dieting process. So you're trying to reset hunger levels a little bit. So maybe you're at the stage where you want to chew your own fucking arm off. You know, everybody that you stare at in the office is about to get stabbed in the neck because you're so hungry. So maybe for their benefit, we just have a few more carbs, and we just ease that process a little bit. So you want to increase carbs because that means that you are going to limit the amount of fat that you potentially would put on if you went into a surplus. If you keep fat very, very low, it's unlikely you'll put on much body fat, if at all. Now, so you're going to have this changing process. But in terms of the other things that are going on, so we mentioned the NEAT, we mentioned BMR. So BMR is likely to be unchanged unless you go over a specific period of time and start to put on weight specifically for that purpose. Then your BMR may change if you put on weight. But in terms of your actual BMI, it's probably unlikely going to change. And then obviously when you slip back into a dieting phase again, that hormonal balance will have a slight shift again, and then you might start to experience more hunger and things like that, and you will have to control using other means. The other thing that you want to look at in terms of this diet break is the psychological benefit, and this is huge because when you have this break from dieting, it really is a weight off your shoulders. Let's say you're in a 500 calorie deficit. 500 calorie deficit is a decent sized fucking meal. So imagine having the feeling you're having right now and then introducing a full meal into your diet right now. That would make you feel good. It make you feel more satisfied. It may make you feel a bit more happier. And therefore, it isn't to be underestimated how positive a psychological break from dieting can be. Now, you might say, well, how long should a diet break be for? Now, really, generally speaking, it can be anywhere from like 3 days, 7 days, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is that you want it to be. It can kind of be up to you. I, generally speaking, if I was working with a client, would look at it depending on how things have gone in the past. So, for example, if the person's adherence hasn't been great to the diet, then you might say, well, actually, these pockets of times where they've gone off track for maybe half a week, or whatever, are effectively diet breaks. So I'm not going to put them specifically into a diet break period. You may, however, say, well, this person has been really, really good. They've been doing well for like 12 weeks, something like that. Now, you could keep pushing that person in a calorie deficit, or you could choose to say, well, we want to minimize the impact of metabolic adaptation. We maybe want to nip that in the bud. We may want to coach this person on what to do after dieting. So that's the other thing that a diet break can do, is that it can coach you through the process of what happens after dieting. Because a lot of people are scared to add calories into their plans if they're making great progress with dieting. So let's say you've been in this position before. You are that yo-yo dieter we talked about at the beginning, and you've been going around the houses with different diets, never making any progress. But now you've fallen onto a way of dieting that has worked. Over the course of 12 weeks, you've lost 10 kilos. You're thinking, wow, this is fucking amazing. Now someone like me comes along and to coach you and says, right, we're going to increase calories. And that's going to mean you're going to increase weight because there's going to be some water. We're not going to increase body fat, but we are going to increase weight, and I want you to eat more. Now, that's quite a difficult mental block to get over, but it can be useful because you are not going to diet forever. At some point, you are going to reach your goal where you have the look that you want. Maybe you've got a rippling six-pack, or maybe you're just leaner and healthier and all that sort of good stuff. At that point, you can't keep dieting. There's no point. You've reached your goal. Your goal is actually to plateau. You want to get to the point where you say, right, I've achieved. How do I maintain? So if you've gone through this whole process for weeks and months of never understanding how to maintain, then you could be in trouble. So it's often a good tactic to use a diet break as a very relaxed way of starting to introduce some of those behaviors. So if you're only doing it for a week, how much as long as it's controlled, you won't put on any body fat. But let's say that it was a little bit uncontrolled. In a week, you're not going to put on enough to make any real noticeable difference. So a diet break can really be useful to say, well, okay, how do I eat when I'm at maintenance? How do I actually increase calories without increasing body fat? How do I learn these skills? And if you do that periodically throughout the dieting process, it makes it a hell of a lot fucking easier when you actually achieve your goal to break that psychological barrier between achieving your goal and eating at a different level, eating more calories than you're used to. So to summarize, a diet break is a useful tool for psychologically and for some physiological benefits to the dieting process. It can help you deal with the effects of metabolic adaptation to a certain degree. It's not the be all and end all, and it's not certainly a cure all for everything. And it also can be a great way for you to deal with the process of what happens after dieting. Now, what should you do? A refeed for one day? Probably not going to cut it. 3 days or more is what it needs to be. Predominantly carbohydrate, low in fat to minimize any potential fat gain. And therefore, just go through that process, just slightly increase those calories, either up to maintenance or into a surplus, and then ride that out for however long you feel like you need to in order to reset everything. But don't underestimate the psychological impact that a good, well-controlled diet break can have. Cool. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you found this useful in terms of wherever you are in your dieting journey and the dieting process. Hopefully you can see now the benefit of having a diet break, and I hope you implement one wherever it is relevant within your journey. And if you enjoyed this episode of the show, then please come and chat to me on Instagram. My username is @iron_paradise_fitness. I'll be super pleased to hear from you and let me know how things are going and if I can help you in any way, shape or form. And maybe, just maybe, you think, well, Simon, you talk a lot of fucking sense and I like this diet break shit, but I don't know what the fuck to do. So why don't I get you to do it for me? Cool, let's do that. Why don't you click the link in the notes and go to ironparadisefitness.com/online-coaching. Have a look at what coaching services I offer and how the voice of the podcast can actually help you achieve your goals and get you from A to B in the fastest possible time frame, and also teach you how to maintain it. Cool, but for now, all I'll say is keep living the lean life. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you on the next one.